This is the day in the life of a podcaster. What I like to start my mornings off with is making my bed. I don't know where I heard it from, but I heard if you don't do anything, at least the first thing you did in your day was make your bed and you feel somewhat accomplished. So I'm making my bed and folding my clothes while I'm watching wrestling. I'm a wrestling fan, and you'll see that later on where I start talking about a movie I saw that was wrestling based. So after I make my bed. I actually washed my hair. I didn't record that because you don't need to see that. But I washed my hair. Took a shower, got dressed, washed my face, brushed my teeth. I did all that stuff. And after I do that, I like to write out my day. Preferably, I like to write it out the night before, but that doesn't always happen. So if I don't write it out the night before, I like to write it out in the morning. And along with writing out my day, I like to journal. Uh, I've been, I've actually had some people in my life say I should journal, and I never did until, let's say, about last year, 2023. I would journal ish before, but not consistently. But now I consistently journal. I try to number each one of my journal entries and, write about not maybe necessarily my day, but what's been on my mind, uh, my thoughts, and how I'm feeling, just to get it out. You don't necessarily like to keep everything bottled in. And it's also a good reflection to see, okay, this is how I was feeling this day, this is what happened that day. So it allows me to, really understand what was going on and how I was feeling, and just keep track of my mood. So the next thing I'd like to do, which I haven't always been doing recently, I haven't been the best at, but I like to read my Bible. Right now I'm on Genesis. I'm somewhere in chapter 20 ish. So I like to spend like an hour reading my Bible, and I do like cross references and stuff, look into the text, learn more information about it. Um, yeah. So now I'm about to do what people will argue is like the most mundane part of life, probably the most boring and agitating, but I like it, and that is cleaning. I'm going to clean my bathroom, which is what we are in right now, and then I'm going to clean my room. I mean, my room's already like kind of clean. I just gotta put some stuff away, do some vacuuming. Yeah. So another time lapse. So yeah, it may seem weird, but I do enjoy vacuuming. I enjoy cleaning. So when I clean, I like to thoroughly clean. I just feel like the same thing with making your bed. Like if you have a clean area, especially a clean work area, it's like everything is less cluttered. It's a physical representation of what's going on internally. If you have a physically clean and organized room, then prayerfully that your mind is organized and you're able to organize your thoughts, and it's less overwhelming too. But while I was cleaning, I was listening to a podcast, and I would suggest, if you're interested in doing a podcast, stuff like that, I would highly suggest you listen to other podcasts. You know, uh, it helps like perfect your work. Like you get better at your craft. You hear how other people talk and hear how other people articulate themselves, and when you hear that constantly, it helps you in the long run. So that's what I do. And I like hearing other people's opinions, whether I agree with it or not. And I like also coming up with my own counter opinion, or a counter argument to their opinion. But I just like learning. And that's what I do with listening to podcasts. I don't just learn about what they're talking about, but also learn how to better express myself as a orator, which is what you do when you're a podcaster. So here, takes place later on in the day, as you can tell. Uh, I think I went to the gym in between doing this. I know I definitely went to the movies. I went to the gym and to the movies in between the last clip and this clip. But here, I'm just recording for my podcast. Actually, the last episode that came out on my podcast, I highly suggest you go check that out. The episode for Avatar: The Last Airbender. I recorded that here, and yeah, I don't like recording like the day before, but sometimes it creeps up on me. I'm definitely trying to get better at that. But as you can see, it's a, I don't want to say automatic process, but I think because been doing this for a little over a year, I kind of have it down to a science. And I think, especially with talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is a show I grew up watching, it's not, and I've watched these episodes several times, it's not terribly difficult to express myself and jot down my opinions. I do have notes that I take during the episode. Yeah, I have notes that I take during the episode, but sometimes it's, you just spitball, you just say what you saw, and you just express it. It's kind of like, I think I've had a lot of experience in this, not just because I've been doing this a year, but also because of the classes I've taken during my time at school. I actually took I forgot what the class was called, but it was like a English film class, a film and literature class. That's what it was. And basically, we would have to share our opinions in front of the class. So yeah, you can already imagine that's kind of intimidating. But once again, I already have experience doing this. I share my opinion to the world. I guess the difference between that and this is I'm doing this in my room, in the privacy of my own room, while at school I have to do it in front of my peers, which can be a bit overwhelming. But yeah, in that class, I had to do a very similar thing where I had to express myself kind of on the spot, especially if the teacher called on us, because there were sometimes she would just call on us at random. Not necessarily me, because I would talk a lot, but you get the gist. But yeah, I feel like I've had experience in that area, and so it makes this process a lot easier. And once again, that's what I mean by like honing your skills. Like once again, if you want to be a podcaster, talk in public, speak to people about your opinion, form your opinion, work on having an opinion, and how to defend your opinion, how to articulate yourself, how to advocate for yourself. Because if you don't know how to do that, then your podcast isn't going to necessarily be great. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I don't have a lot of people that listen to my podcast, but I do appreciate the few that do. But I'm just giving out suggestions as from doing this for about a year and having taken classes like film and literature and public speaking and even a film class. I understand now a lot better than I did when I started this podcast how to articulate myself and how to get my point across. I'm still a work in progress. I think I could do a lot better of a job. I mean, we all can do a lot better of a job just in anything, but I definitely think I could do a lot better of a job of maybe condensing myself, maybe speaking a bit less. Speaking a bit less, but leaving an impactful opinion and an assessment, and yeah. But yeah, that's what I'm doing right here. Here's a little clip of that. Han shows up in the uniform, the Fire Nation uniform. Sokka laughs, and I'm like, that's real mature of you. You could have said it in a more appropriate way. Hey, this is not how the Fire Nation. This is not the Fire Nation attire as of today, but that's one example of the lack of maturity. And then when he and Han are talking, and Sokka's jealous because he gets to be with Yue, and he attacks Han. I'm like, that's once again real mature of you, but it shows. In comparison to that, we see Sokka's actions, but then we see Aang's actions, and we see Aang is really acting like a man. He really is stepping up. And when when Aang came back after, he's like, I took out like a dozen Fire Nation ships, and it still wasn't enough. And then Yue was like, well, you have to. He's like, but he didn't say I'm just one person, I'm just one guy. He said, I'm just a kid. And it really just points out how wrong the air nomads were for telling Aang that he was the Avatar at the age of 12. Because of course later on we see that is nowhere near the norm. The norm was to tell the Avatar that they were the Avatar around the age of 16 to 16, 17, 18-ish. We see that later on in season 3. I won't go into it too much, but you could just see how that was obviously the choice they had to make, because right around the corner they were exterminated. They were it was a genocide. All of them almost perished except for Aang. Aang was the only one. Obviously that's why the show is titled Last Airbender. But you see why, even though it was the wrong decision, you see at the it's wrong. It's wrong. You watched the show. I've never seen this before. Watching it now, I guess with adult eyes, or maybe even having watched the show prior, but you see and understanding the story behind it a lot better. But you see why you wait until they are a teenager to tell them, and towards their mid to late teens, that they are the avatar, because that's the only time they are truly mentally ready to handle it. And of course, you probably wouldn't tell them when they're in 20s, because when you get older, it's a bit more difficult to learn things than it is when you're younger, to acquire new hobbies that stick. But my God, it just proves the point further and further, at least in my mind, as to why it was so inappropriate. Yet they had to. But if the world was perfect, it's so inappropriate to tell a child that they are the avatar, because they have the weight of the world on their shoulder. They must bring balance. That is the whole reason why they are there. You think of Star Wars, and this show has heavy ties, or at least heavy similarities to Star Wars. And you think of Star Wars, Luke was 19 when all of this started. And he was so immature as a 19-year-old. And the fact that Aang, a 12-year-old, has to step up in such a way is incredible, at least to me, in the progression of the story and how he has matured. But yes, being a man... Shoot, I want to quote it properly. Being a man is knowing where you're needed the most. So, what did I do? Last time you saw me, from the last time you saw me. Right now I'm eating dinner. Should have flipped it over, because I got the skin is mad crispy, bro. Anyway, I went to the movies. I saw Iron Claw. I'm gonna try to talk loud, because I have a problem of speaking softly, but I'm slightly insecure, that's why. But I saw Iron Claw. That was one of the most saddest movies I've ever seen. And here's the thing. I almost cried. Well, not almost cried, but like, I felt like tears could form when I was watching. I don't know, ever since I got older. Like, before I would never cry at movies. Now it's like, and I've still never really cried at a movie, but now things have changed. But what was I saying? Anyway, I saw that today. That was one of the saddest movies I've ever seen in my life, bro. I think what makes it even more sad is the fact that it was real. I could got a little spoiler warning. So like, as a wrestling fan, because that's why y'all saw me watching wrestling early this morning. The main reason I watched it was because I love wrestling. And there's a line in the movie where Zac Efron's speaking to Lily James's character, which I was like, that's Lily James? Because I only saw her in Tom and Pammy, or Pam. No, I'm sorry, Pam and Tommy. Tommy and Pam, whatever, regardless. I was like, that's what she looks like? Huh. Anyway, so seeing between their two characters, and she's like, isn't that fake? And he's like, no. And I felt that because, like, wrestling is an art. It's a sport, but it's also an art form. But you know what it also is like? It's like acting. Nobody says to an actor, oh, isn't that fake? Because the truth is, it is fake. But for some reason, when it comes to wrestling, that's the automatic comment, I guess. So, yeah, it's predetermined. But there's so much that goes into it. Now, I like that this movie showed that. Also, another interesting thing about this movie, like, there's a lot of one-shots, like things that are done in one-shots, and I didn't realize that towards the end, or until towards the end. And there's also, these shots are always like very close to the actor's face. Except for the very last scene, you are always like uncomfortably close to these people. And I think that shows like the relationship that the Von Erich brothers had with one another, where they were like very close, maybe uncomfortably close. So I really like that about that movie. Yeah, that movie's just really sad. Like, there's one scene where one character dies, and his mom is watching his brother wrestle. And in the background, so you see, she's up close, she's in focus in the foreground, but in the background you see somebody. And then like, I think she turns around, and then she turns back around, and they're gone. And I thought that was one of the other brothers, but no, it's the brother that died. And I was like, wow. Because like, they had this whole thing in the family where they couldn't talk about it. And there's this line where she says, and I didn't know this was where it was going. I didn't know they all died, IRL. Spoilers, I already warned you. But there was a line where she was like, handle that with your brother. And I understand parents wanting children to learn how to handle other personalities. But, and their dad said it later on too, and so now I'm thinking about her just now, you can argue that she maybe learned that type of behavior from her husband. Where it's like, no, the boys just need to handle it, they'll figure it out. You know? But man, it was, I keep saying it was really sad, but it was a really good movie. The cinematography, I loved it. I loved how it looked like it was from the 80s. You know, because that's the time period it takes place, like roughly the 80s, 70s, like 70s, 80s-ish. There's some scenes where like, it's like they did it like 3 times, where it kind of like fades, like it does a dissolve, like this. I'm assuming in editing I showed the dissolve, but it doesn't dissolve like this. And I think the dissolve, like in one part, excuse me, it was showing a championship belt, and then it was showing the person that had it. So I feel like maybe it was showing like how desirable it was, but then you have to get past somebody, you know? But I remember, like, when I was watching it, I was just like, there were a couple times I'm not a very verbal person at the movie theater. But I was watching it, I was like, oh, God, no, please. And sure enough. But I would say one of my favorite scenes, besides the one where the mom was watching TV, was at the end. And it's really sad, but it's still kind of beautiful in a way. Was when Carrie, he dies, and he wakes up. It's kind of like in Vinland Saga, where Thorfinn gets knocked out and he wakes up in Vinland, and he's like, oh, it was all just a bad dream, you know? So Carrie, he kind of wakes up in Vinland, and he has his foot, and he's hopping around, and then he has the quarter that kind of decided his fate, and then he sees his brothers, and Mike has a guitar because he wanted to be a musician. David has the World Heavyweight Championship belt because that's what he wanted to be. And I love how they hug. And he's like, oh, I'm with my brothers. I missed you guys. And I love how Carrie kisses his brother on the cheek. And like, you know, people nowadays would be like, whoa, what the heck? But it just shows how much they love each other. And then he was like, where's Jack Jr.? And then their little brother shows up, because their older little brother, because they never met. Because Carrie was the baby of the family, and Carrie's like, I'm Carrie. And then I love how he hugs him. Like, he's this big guy hugging this kid. And it's so beautiful. It's really sad. And the last scene with Kevin, he was watching his sons play football, and you can obviously think back to later on or earlier in the movie where they're all playing football, and he's like, I'm no longer a brother. And I'm like, oh god. I don't have any siblings, so I don't really know how that feels, but I was like, I can only imagine. But the cutest thing is like, and he was saying a man doesn't cry, and then his sons were like, but you cry all the time, Dad. But the cutest thing was they said, well, we can be your brothers. Man, honestly, I might rate that movie like a 5 out of 5, 4.5. Because that was, like, as a wrestling fan, amazing. I love the cinematography. As a movie fan, loved it. Yeah, if you haven't seen this movie, I know I said it's sad, but it's really good. I suggest, oh, bro, the lighting in some of those scenes too. Like when David dies, like the lighting in the room is so dark, just kind of like foretelling like what's gonna happen, you know? Like foretelling that there's some bad news that Kevin's about to find out. But yeah, even though I said it was sad, I'd highly recommend everybody see this movie. So, right now, about to get ready to hit the pillow. It's only 9:13, but I'm about to kill some time by playing some video games and listening to one of my favorite podcasts. Recently, kind of been going through a lot, so my mood has been kind of trash. So, just try to take things one day at a time. And because I've been feeling, you know, we all feel sometimes a little down, so, but because I've been feeling that way, I was like, I should just do something that's really gonna make me feel better. Like, is it best to have screen time before bed? No, it's not necessarily ideal, but you know, cheat every once in a while. So I got my episode actually uploading right now for the YouTube. Is uploading for it to be scheduled at 12, so in about 3 hours. Finish recording that. I don't do much editing on those ones, on the reviews, but the other ones, the ones that come out just on Wednesdays, I definitely do some editing. But yeah, I might do a time lapse. I might not, because you might want to hear me scream at the TV. Because I'm playing 2K and that game always gets me heated. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. Alright, so like, I play 2K. First of all, let me preface and say what 2K is. For those you don't know, that's what us in the basketball community call the game. Because technically there's like 2K for WWE. I'm wide open. Thank you kindly. But yeah, that's what us in the basketball community call it. Like the digital basketball community call it. My favorite 2K is 2K14, so I always play that, even though that game gets on my last nerves. Because 2K in general just gets on my nerves. That's why I stopped playing. Out of here! I was hanging out with family the other day and I was playing Madden. Oh my gosh! That's what I'm talking about! Whatever, 2K. That's what I'm talking about. Come on, use the pick. Wide open. Oh, okay, he's gonna dish it off to me. And look at that! How's my shot blocked? Okay, I need to calm down because it's like 9 o'clock and people trying to get ready for bed. But I was saying before, I was hanging out with family, and somebody was like, "Why are you yelling at the TV?" Because I was playing Madden. I was like, "That's just how it works." You know? Oh my goodness, Before I end this episode, I recorded this a while ago for a different day in a life. And even though this was recorded on a different day, I think this is still impactful. And it is still relevant and a part of my day. So I'm sure you're wondering what I'm doing crawled up against the bathroom floor. But recently, past week or so, maybe 2 weeks, this has been a part of my day. I don't want to go to too many specifics because I don't feel comfortable about being completely transparent about this, but I made a project for myself. Um, I'll show it later on in this video, but I made a project for myself, and the project was to write as many Bible verses as I could on my bathroom cabinet. That could fill up the whole cabinet. Um, and I did that because I mean it might sound weird, but I feel like people do weird stuff all the time in the comfort of their own home. Sometimes I just lay on this floor, watch stuff in here, or just think or write. I know once again that sounds weird. I do this in my bathroom, but I don't know. Sometimes I do that. So, um, my lips are chapped. That's gross. Um, but and I've been thinking all day about how I would say this, but I'm just gonna leave it like this, leave it unedited. Um, but yeah, I write Bible verses and put them on my bathroom the cabinet door of my bathroom. Um, because sometimes when I'm having a hard time, I'm just in here, you know, looking at my phone, comparing myself to other people, doing a lot of things that are not necessarily good for my mental health. And so, sometimes I have a hard time with certain things, with making it through certain things, you know? Um, like thinking of myself positively, putting myself in a positive light, thinking of myself as I would think of my friends, how I would want to treat my friends. Sometimes, especially now, it's tough. I say tough a lot. I need to find a different word, but you understand it's tough, it's difficult, it can be overwhelming. Um, Especially because I've made some adult decisions recently. And once again, I've said this on my friend's podcast. Shout out to my friend Nate. Go listen to his podcast, Imperfect Podcast. When I say certain things, it's not to gain sympathy. It's not the woe is me. It's just to be transparent and honest. And so when I say this, it's not for that. But I've had to make some decisions that some people in my life don't necessarily agree with. They don't necessarily understand. And that's, I've been writing in my journal and I'm saying, that's life. Life is full of people sometimes being disappointed in you because you're making decisions that they wouldn't make in your situation. But the thing is, nobody's in your situation but you. No one's living your life but you. And so I've had to realize that I need to live my life the way I want to live it. What's best for me. And not everybody's going to understand that. And I'm learning to be okay with that. Learning to be okay with not having to explain myself. Because at the end of the day, the only person I'm going to have to explain myself to it when it's all said and done, it's my Heavenly Father. So I want to go to the throne of grace with no regrets and lack of excuses, He asked me, Zoe, why'd you do this? This wasn't according to my will. But you know what? You're right. And I have no one to blame but myself. But what I love about the Bible, it talks about temptation and dealing with difficulties in life. And once again, I'm sure what I'm about to say is like gonna turn people off, but I don't care. This is what I mean about living your life the way you gotta live it. You feel me? People gonna be probably disappointed when I say this or whatever. They don't want to hear it. They don't understand. That's cool, but this is my life, and this is the fact of the matter. What I love about Hebrews, the epistle to the Hebrews, it's probably my favorite epistle from the New Testament. Probably my favorite, save for the Gospel of John, is probably my favorite book of the New Testament because it talks more about Jesus' divinity, but what I love about it is it talks about God's grace. You know, a lot of people who don't understand Christianity look at God as an angry person. Oh, he's mad. You know, my pastor were talking about this last night, honestly, at Bible study. But, you know, people talk about God as like, at least, you know, from Christianity, oh, he's an angry person. He doesn't want to see you happy. This doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. You know, they think that God's just, yeah, vengeance and wrath and rage and frustration and punishment. But at the end of the day, Hebrews talks mostly about Jesus' divinity, but it also talks about God's grace and his mercy. And I love Hebrews 4, chapter 4. Towards the end, I haven't memorized the verse yet, where it says that Jesus is a sympathetic high priest because he's experienced what we've experienced. Like it harkens back to chapter 2, where it says that Jesus was tempted in the ways that we are tempted as people. So towards the end of towards the end of chapter 4, it says that we have a sympathetic high priest. Therefore, we should come to the throne of grace confidently because he's willing to forgive us. He's willing to comfort us. He's willing to love us. We just need to let him love us. And so, with all that being said, that's what I've been writing in my bathroom cabinet to remind myself that there are going to be times when I feel alone, where I feel like I need to explain myself, or even I don't like myself. Huh. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I think of myself. It doesn't matter what other people think of myself. At the end of the day, it matters what God thinks about me. It matters what God thinks about me. I'm looking a little rough. I need to wash my hair. Oh, I got a lot of hair, y'all. You can see it in the beginning of my face. It's probably not the best angle, but hey. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, yeah, of anybody's opinion about me but God's. And I love Prince of Egypt. That movie's fire. Might watch it for my birthday because we have a just interesting tradition that just so happened to be on my birthday. Like every birthday I've had since I've lived here, my family and I watched a movie that I chose. So it might be Prince of Egypt. I've actually been thinking for quite a while what movie I want to watch. But there's a song that Jethro sings to Moses when Moses first shows up. And Jethro later becomes Moses' father-in-law. But when Moses shows up, he's like, "How could? Why are you thanking me for saving your daughters? Or why are you calling me a good man? I'm not a good man. I haven't done a good thing in my life. I'm not worthy of any respect." And Jethro's like, "You don't even understand how valuable your life is, bro." He's like, "You can't look at your life through the eyes of man's, but you need to look at your life through the eyes of heaven. So how do you know? How can you judge what a man is worth by what he builds or buys? You can never see with the eyes of man. Look at your life. Look at your life through heaven's eyes." So, yeah, I know I went on a little tangent. This is honestly the first time I'm like legit speaking to the camera instead of doing a voiceover, which I'm gonna do, when I edit all this. But yeah, I'm gonna do a time lapse of me writing it down. We can see the little design I got going on. I bought some sticky notes, and I've done this like twice, but I wasn't happy with how it looked, so I'm gonna do it for a third time. So yeah. So this is what it's looking like right now. I got other stickies. I don't know where they went. Where'd they go? Oh, they're behind me. I got I used one of these colors. I think I used the darker one. Yeah, I used the darker one. I got another one. If I could find it. The pink one. Here. I got this. So yeah. I haven't written down my favorite of these yet. But my favorite of these... See, doesn't that look crooked? Oh yeah, that definitely looks crooked. But you know what? Like, God is perfect. I'm not perfect. But I haven't put my favorite one up of these yet. But I have like 3. So these 2 are one verse. But now this says, "The Lord, He who created you, O Jacob, He who formed you, O Israel, fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine." That's one of my favorites. The next one, basically talk about going through difficulties. One of my favorites. But this one, I just re-listened to the book of Matthew, and behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. That one hits. That one hits.